Okay, so you say I talked about Vermeer. Did I talk about woman holding a balance? No. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. I don't mind you eating, but I do mind the noise. All right. So we are in the Dutch Republic, same place as Rembrandt. And Vermeer is a very unique artist. Did I talk about his number of paintings? Okay. Okay. All right. Did I talk about how all of his artworks are like very similar? All right. So then we were just beginning the woman holding a balance. Did we write this down yesterday? Okay. Did I talk about a burger yesterday? Okay. And I talked about the background painting? Okay. Did I talk about this painting? All right. Yeah. So curtains being theatrical. I talked about that yesterday. All right. Now, did I talk about the map? All right. So, on the back wall of this painting, there's a map, and that maps were very popular at the time because of the new technology that made boats better, and they were able to sail better and transport goods from one place to another without sinking. So there was a renewed interest in trade, and also there was a lot of new exploration. There's, the colonies in America were going strong at this time. There were colonies in South America, and there was new crops or new um, uh, sources of tobacco and sugar and coffee and tea were coming from the Americas. So boats sailing in and out of the harbor was a major thing. That's how people were making lots of money. So it's natural for them to be interested in maps because that's part of their business. And so maps became a popular thing to have on their walls. And did we talk about camera obscura yesterday? All right, a camera obscura is a little tiny room, smaller than a closet, painted black on the inside with and it is light tight, meaning that have you ever when you were a kid like hid in the closet and when he shut the door, there's still light coming in from around the door and under the door. All right, so it's dark in the closet, but it's not 100% dark. You can still see. Well, that's not the case for the camera obscura. It is 100% light tight on the inside. No light is coming in except for a tiny little pinhole. And when I mean pinhole, you take a pin, a PIN, not a PEN, a pin that you do sewing with, and you poke a little tiny hole into it. So it's like a almost like a microscopic hole. And that is the only light that is coming in to this little room. And so it shines on the opposite wall. And but what it does is it shows everything that you see in front of that hole. So here in this instance, we see this landscape right here on the outside of the box. I mean, use my amazing powers of PowerPoint. We had this landscape out here. And then on the inside of the camera obscura, we have that landscape shown on the wall. It's almost like a projector, but it's just a hole in the wall. And what the artist does is he's inside this camera obscura and he can trace on a piece of paper, on a piece of fabric, he can trace what is projected up on the canvas. So it is a way of drawing realistically. It's a time saver for artists. But some people call that cheating because you're tracing, right? He could still draw realistically, but he's just saving time. And so some people would call this cheating, and other people would say, well, it's an artist using a tool. I can imagine like the first cavemen. Remember when I was telling you about Paleolithic art? The first cavemen used their fingers to paint on the wall, but it was the Neolithic that used a brush. And I can imagine the Paleolithic artist looking at the Neolithic artist and pointing to the brush and saying, hey, that's cheating. Well, it's just using a tool. So that's the argument with a camera obscura. And the camera obscura takes up several different forms. And so here's another camera obscura, and you can see the image of the woman. So the woman is standing outside the camera obscura. The light is shining in, and then she is projected upon the screen, and the artist is able to trace. Now, I want you to notice the image on the inside. Is that right side up or upside down? It's upside down. So check this out. Light from the top, like from the top of her head, goes through the camera obscura and shines on the bottom of the surface over there. So the top of her head is at the bottom of the image. Light from down below shines through the camera obscura's pinhole and shines up at the top. So this is how light works. Your camera obscura works exactly how your eye does. Your eye is this dark room, and the light only comes in through the pupil. And on the back of your eye, the retina, is where the image is projected on the back of the eye, and it is projected upside down. So right now we are all upside down. All right, so we're seeing the image in front of us. The image, light from above is going through our eyeball and hitting the back of the retina in the back of the eye. The light from down below is going through the pupil and hitting back of the retina at the top. So the image in front of us is upside down. All right, and then here's another camera obscura that's on a smaller scale. So check out this image right here. At the top right over here is a painting by Vermeer. And this, like an illustrator, has illustrated how the camera obscura would have worked in this situation. So in the room would have been these two models at a piano, and then across the room would be a small camera obscura with Vermeer on the other side copying the picture. All right, so this is what it would have looked like. Now, art historians believe that Vermeer used a camera obscura in some of his artworks. In fact, many of his artworks. And there's evidence of it here in this picture of the girl with the red hat. And if you look at, she's sitting at a chair, and at the top of the chair, you can see the top of the chair, there's these two lion heads. And the way that he has painted these lion heads gives art historians evidence that he probably used a camera obscura to paint this image. So if we take a look at how a camera obscura projects an image, so the light goes into the camera obscura, reflects on the back of the screen, and then the artist would have, this is what the artist would have seen that lion head look like. This is a camera obscura photograph of the lion head. And so when you flip it upside down and you compare it to how he painted the lion head in the painting, it looks exactly like how a camera obscura would have seen. your eye does not see the world like a camera obscura does, because your eye would focus on things. A camera obscura, when you project it, inside the room, everything is slightly blurry. Like the camera obscura is not a perfect photograph. They're slightly blurry. And Vermeer painted the lion head slightly blurry. If he had been looking at the lion head without using the camera obscura, he would have painted it in detail, not in this blurry manner. So that is the evidence. And there's many more, but I'm just using this one instance to show you the evidence. All right. One of the paintings that you've all been waiting for, a girl with a pearl earring. The nickname of this painting is the Mona Lisa of the North. It's one of those paintings that's super famous. I think if I'd ask you to raise your hand if you've seen this picture before taking this class, most of you would raise your hand. Are we done with this slide? Let's take a closer look. This painting only became popular in the late 20th century. And so we have that eye contact. She has her lips parted as if she's about to say something. And it's a mystery as to who she is. There was a movie that came out a few years ago, and the movie was based on a fictional book about this painting. The movie was called Girl with the Pearl Earring, and it had who's the girl that played Black Widow in the Marvel movies? Scarlett Johansson, is that right? So she played the girl with the pearl earring. And so in that movie, she was, I guess, like a maid that worked in the home of Vermeer, and they had an affair, and he painted this picture. But that was a fictional account of what happened. There's no evidence that this is anybody other than just a model. So they don't know who it is. Now, what she is wearing is odd. This is not what the Dutch people of the Dutch Republic wore. Can you tell, like, what part of the world that this clothing might be from? Well, it's Turkish. All right, she's wearing so it's the Middle East. So she is dressed up in costume. She's it's almost like cosplay. And that was kind of fashionable at the time to wear things that were exotic. It was very rare to see clothes from other cultures in the Dutch Republic at this time. Now, this is not a portrait. It looks like a portrait, but it's not a portrait. This is a trony. I want you to know what a trony is. A trony will definitely be on the test. This was popular in the 17th century, so that means the 1600s. A Dutch painting style depiction. I think it should say depicting people with exaggerated facial expressions or in costume. So the painting on the left, is that an exaggerated facial expression? Absolutely. The painting on the right, is that an exaggerated facial expression? No. But what makes it a trony? The costume. So in these paintings, in these tronies, it is a character that is being painted, not a person. And then there's talk about the actual pearl earring. There's disagreement as to whether that is an actual pearl or not. So the title is "Girl with a Pearl Earring." Actually, there was no title to this painting. The title was applied to it, 100 years, 200 years after this painting was found, or um, so it was a title that was applied to it long after the artist had died. So there's disagreement of whether this is a pearl earring or not. Some say it is too large for a pearl, and a pearl would have softer highlights. If you look at the shine on the pearl earring, then you would see that it looks like it's made out of tin. All right. Any questions about any of the artists that we've talked about so far with the Baroque? All right. I have some quote unquote stuff to talk about. So during this time, the king of France is Louis XIV, and he is the master of propaganda. By the way, look at this painting of him. A couple of things strike me about the painting. What strikes you about the painting? Yeah, right. It does. Looks like he's wearing the shoes from what? Yes, right. And he's got very handsome legs. By the way, does he look young or old? Look at his face. All right. See, he was one of the longest living or the longest serving kings of France ever. I think his reign was 60 something years, which is an incredibly long time for a king. Um, the other thing I notice when I look at this is that blue cape with the fleur de lis all over it. By the way, fleur de lis. And so that's very French. If you remember from the Rubens paintings, the allegory of France urging the king to fall in love with the Medici, and then urging the Medici or welcoming the Medici off of the boat and into France. So was wearing a cape much like this one. So by wearing this cape, the king is saying, "I am France. I am an allegory of France." All right, I want to talk about his legs. He was a dancer. He loved to dance. He loved to dance, and so he has his court there. And what I mean by the court is like all the government officials that are close to him. And he would go up on stage dressed in elaborate costumes and dance to entertain the court. It's so odd to think of your like the king or the president to be an entertainer like that. All right. By the way, fleur de lis. All right. I want you to know about Louis XIV because he is important for art history for two main reasons. All right. The first one is raps, and I'll talk about raps in a second. And the second reason why he's important to art history is that he died. Okay, so RAPS. RAPS stands for the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. At this time in France, if they wanted to get a good artist, if you want to hire the best artist to paint a history painting or to paint something for the king, you would go outside of France. You would go to Flanders. You would go to the Dutch Republic. You would go to Italy. There were no good French artists at this time that were capable of doing stuff that would make amazing things. So King Louis XIV decided, if we don't have any good French artists, then let's make a school that will train French artists to do art that we want them to do. And so that's what this is. He created this art school. So the Academy founded in response to two related concerns: a nationalistic desire to establish a decidedly French artistic tradition, and the need for a large number of well-trained artists to fulfill an important commissions for the royal circle or the royal court. The previous monarchs had imported, where are you? Artists primarily from Flanders and Italy to execute major projects. And in contrast, Louis XIV sought to cultivate and support French artists as part of a grander project of self-fashioning, with art playing a vital role in the construction of the royal image. And this helped to establish France as a leader in art. Up until now, Italy has been a major leader in art. And last semester, a lot of artwork that we looked at was in Italy. And this semester, like the Renaissance was dominated by Italian artists. You know, we looked a little bit in the north, we looked a little bit in Spain and France, but most of the dominant art is coming from Italy. And France wants to change that. The Academy rose quickly to prominence in conjunction with the Ministry of Arts, responsible for construction, decoration, and upkeep of the King's buildings. All right, so this is basically how the Academy works. So notice on the left side, there is some young students that are drawing pictures from pictures. They are looking at master drawings and they are copying those drawings. On the wall behind them, I want you to notice these things. It looks like heads and arms and feet and legs. These are plaster casts. And I have some plaster casts. Let me show you a plaster cast. Give me a second. All right, this is a plaster cast. In a perfect world, in an ideal world, the art students would have access to a sculpture. Like you can go and look at the sculpture of David and draw the sculpture of David. It's not a perfect world. In order for you to see the sculpture of David, you have to get on a plane, pay tickets, go to Florence and visit the statue of David. Very inconvenient just for a drawing. What you can do instead is make a plaster copy of the statue of David. And that's what this is. This is a copy of the statue of David. So instead of having the actual statue here, I can have a copy of it here. And you guys, as my art students, can draw this sculpture. All right, that's what a plaster cast is. So in the center of this image, we have a group of students who are drawing from a plaster cast. And then over on the right side, we have a live model. And students are drawing that live model. They are, when I was in undergrad, I was a studio major. I took art classes, and some of the classes I took were life drawing. So when I went to class, there was a live nude model. So the university would pay people to model nude. And then the class would all draw that picture, that person naked. All right. So you get to understand the anatomy of the human figure. And then on the far right, we have this actual sculpture. And there's a person here that's painting that sculpture. All right. Now, the Academy is different than the Artist Guild. The Artist Guild has been training artists since forever. But the Artist Guild is no different than the Wool Guild, than the Armorers Guild, than all these other guilds. They treat artists as just workmen, that it doesn't really give them any specific training into making amazing works of art. Artist guilds train artists just to make art that will decorate buildings, that it's good enough to be bought and sold, but it's not truly amazing. And so the academy was going to give them extra training so that they go above and beyond. They make these amazing works of art for the king. The academy saw themselves as better than the Artist Guild. And they were quite, let's see, artist guilds were more like other guilds, just like I said. Artists were seen not above shoemakers or blacksmiths. The academy controlled the arts by privileging certain subjects and by establishing a hierarchy among its members. From its inception, the academy was structured around hierarchy. They sought to elevate the status of artists by emphasizing their intellectual and creative capacities. Basically, they're making the artists a higher level of society. They're raising artists to be at the top tier of society. They sought to differentiate members of the academy from guild members to show artists as gentlemen socializing rather than artisans laboring. And so it takes on a whole new significance of the artist. In order for an artist to become a member of the academy, they would have to go before the academy and show their artwork, say and prove that they're good enough to be trained in the ways of the academy. So here I have this artist, and he's showing this artwork to the members of the academy, and he says, I want to join the academy, here's my art. And so either they can say, your art is terrible and we hate you, get lost, and then they all agree. Or the artist can say, I'm an artist, I want to join the academy, here's my art. Oh, also, my father owns the bank you borrowed money from. And then therefore they'd say, your art is good and we love you. And so they all agree. This system is quite unfair, and it was nepotistic. It was nepotism. So if it's not what you knew, it's who you knew that would allow people to get into the academy. I want you to know who Charles Le Brun is. Charles Le Brun was the first painter to the king. That means he was the king's personal artist. And he did a lot of paintings of the king to make the king look good. It's basically propaganda for the king. For example, in this painting right here, the entry of Alexander the Great into Babylon, you see Alexander the Great on that giant chariot being pulled by an elephant. Is that right? Is that an elephant? That's an elephant. And that is, even though it's a painting of Alexander the Great, it's not really Alexander the Great. It's King Louis XIV. It's a representation of King Louis XIV. But I wanted to, and we're not going to look at many of Charles Le Brun's paintings, but I want you to know that the king put Charles Le Brun in charge of setting up the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. So he oversaw it. He hired the teachers. He organized it, and so it was his it was his responsibility to run it. And he wrote this book for artists on how to do these facial expressions, how to do the anatomy of the body. So the artwork was very controlled, what the artists were being taught to do. They all began to have the same look. They were being taught how to have the same facial expressions, the same body types. And so it was very dogmatic. It was very overbearing on the artist. They didn't have much freedom to do what they wanted to do. But it was prestigious. It was very high prestige to be in the Academy. All right. So then the Louvre, which is the palace of the king, became the art school. It became the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture, and then eventually it became the most famous art museum. So, this is where its beginnings were. Now, people that were privileged and wanted to hire the best artists would go to the academy and hire those artists to paint pictures for them. So that's kind of how commissions worked. And if you were not an artist that was trained by the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture, then you did not get the commissions. So it was a very privileged system that the most privileged artists were the ones that were in the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture, the RAPS. All right, I want you to know what a salon is. And I want you to write this word salon with a big giant S. So, beginning in 1667, the Academy creates the Salon, which showcases the Academy artists. And so, basically, it's a big art show that takes place every couple of years. And rich people will come and buy the artwork from the students of the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. It was deemed very prestigious um, by the Academy to, or it was deemed by the prestigious academies to be very important. And it was this whole system of the Royal Academy and the Salon that made art very elitist for the first time. That this high art was only for the top people in society, it wasn't for the common man. All right, one more thing I want to talk about with Louis the 14th. Um, a big thing that he did is that he moved his government out of Paris to Versailles. Versailles was a little, well, not little, but Versailles was a hunting lodge that was in his family. And he moved his entire government out of the main downtown city of Paris to this hunting lodge. And there's a whole big complex of buildings where he kept all of his main officials. The reason why he did this is that in Paris, all of his members of government had access to other individuals that were in Paris. And that led to a lot of infighting. People were challenging his authority. And in order to get control of everything, to isolate everybody in his government away from the influences in Paris, he moved them out of Paris. And he created this vast, uh, complex to house his government. I want to show you his bedroom because he did a lot of business from his bedroom. You think about kings and doing all their business from a throne in a throne room. He did all his business from his bedroom. And so here's some more images of the complex. But this is important for the beginning of our next chapter. We got 10 minutes left. All right, so let's go ahead and dig into that next chapter. All right, everybody. So much art history, never enough time to cover it all. So let's go run through the art museum. We are starting chapter 26. We're going to be looking at Rococo, Neoclassicism. and I've decided to let enlightenment go. We're going to be unenlightened. All right, so go to your next empty page, write chapter 26 at the top. Then go to your table of contents, write this page number onto the chapter 26 entry and your table of contents. And also, there's a reminder to do 5 quick hand-drawn sketches per chapter. Are you ready? All right, let's get into this. So I've already explained to you guys the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. In this image right here, I have another depiction of the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. Let's go back. I'm going to do this and this. All right, so in this corner right here, we have a couple of young students that are bringing their artworks to the teacher, and he's discussing their artworks. Here we have 2 models, 2 live models, and then over here is a group of students drawing from those live models. And up here we have a sculpture that students can draw. Over here there's a sculpture students can draw. There's a plaster cast up here, and then other paintings and stuff going on over here that students can work from. All right, I'm going to skip past this. And one of the things that the Academy did is that they established the hierarchy of important artworks. I've already discussed this with you. All right, this should be in your notes from the previous chapters, but just a quick review that the number one category of painting is history painting. And that's like this one right here of David. We'll see this one a little bit later in a future chapter of Napoleon. All right, so history and religion and mythological stories. All right, that's what history painting is. It's the most difficult and it's the most challenging, and therefore it has the highest prestige. Portrait painting is the second. Genre painting comes in third. Then we have landscapes and still life. All right, I told you about a salon, so we can go. And I told you that Louis XIV had 2 important contributions to art history. And one was the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. And then here comes the second one, and that is he died. All right. And because he died, all right, he was not well loved. Right? Everybody was in fear of him. He kept everybody in line through fear and not through benevolence or kindness. And so everybody was in fear of him. And then when he died, there was a huge relief. In fact, there's a story that during the funeral procession, people cheered at his coffin. They were cheering the death of Louis XIV, not cheering the life of Louis XIV. Now, his kingdom should have gone to his son, but his son was still an infant at that time. So it instead went to his nephew. His nephew was not a good person. He didn't know how to run the government, and he didn't care about running the government. Basically, he just used the money, like the king is in charge of all the money that the kingdom has. And so he's just using that money to party. So he has these lavish parties and orgies, and all of his friends and all these government officials are having these debaucherous parties. And I want you to know what debauchery is. It's going to come up in a slide later on, but write down this word: DEBAUCHERY, debauchery. DEBAUCHERY, debauchery. Debauchery is totally disgusting behavior. Drinking too much, eating too much, like to the extreme, too much sex, too much, all these vices, spending too much, prostitutes, violence. This is all debauchery, all the negative things in society. These people are having a party with. All right, so that is the corruption of this government at the time. Now, I told you that he had moved everybody to Versailles. Once he dies, they all move back into Paris. And when they go back to Paris, that they have all this freedom because Louis the 14th is dead, and the nephew of Louis the 14th doesn't care what you do. He's partying it up and having a good time. He's not paying attention to what you're doing. So everybody begins to spend their money, and they're having these they're moving into these apartments with these elaborate decorations. Now, Rococo comes from the word rocaille, which is flowing organic lines. So if you look at the decoration of this apartment, and yes, this is an apartment. How big is this apartment? Right? It's giant. But this apartment, and look at all the excess stuff on the walls. These flowing lines is all these little curlicues and these excessive decorations. It's gaudy. It's too much. Here's a good example of Rococo. On the left is a normal table that you and I would have. On the right is a Rococo style table. Look at all the excess flowing lines. On the left is normal doors that you and I would do. On the right is the excessive decoration of Rococo. All right, I want you to know what an overdoor is. So write that term down, overdoors. Rococo that we're about to get into is 90% an interior decoration movement. I just showed you those rooms with all the excessive decoration, the furniture, the doors, excessively decorated. That is 90% of what Rococo is. It is not a movement in art. But there's these small little paintings that are above doors. And if I go back to this one, you can see above here is a painting above the doors. And so that's kind of where the art is. And other, like these other paintings that we're going to look at are, pretty much decorations for houses. All right. And one last thing is write this word down, salon with a small s. I'm going to let you guys get your phones, and I will explain salon with a small s to you tomorrow. Tomorrow when I ask you, where do we leave off? I want you to tell me salon with a small s. Got it? And then we'll get into Rococo painting. I tried to make it before 8:06.